All right, with me now is Stuart Trew, International Trade Policy Research with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. Stuart, good to see you again. I want to begin by asking you about when consumers are going to start to feel the impact of these tariffs on everyday items.
That's a really good question. It's hard to know, and there's a lot of factors at play, right? So, it depends on where the products are coming from. Certainly, products coming from the United States. Let's keep in mind that currently we have retaliatory tariffs only on products from the United States. So when we bring goods in from other countries, like T-shirts, like automotive products from other parts of the world, they're not facing a tariff coming into Canada. So we're only really going to see tariff-related hikes on the price of goods coming from the United States where we've applied retaliatory tariffs. Now, there's some kind of question marks around when will the price increases in U.S. products, right, start to materialize based on these global tariffs. And by that, I mean the price changes based on the higher cost of inputs that go into things that the United States makes that then come into Canada. So that's really the question for me, is like, that's going to be a bit of a longer term thing to see. We're not going to see them immediately. I think consumer goods, we can feel pretty good that they're going to remain more or less the same price for now. And the risk for Canada is more on the production side, right? It's not so much in the cost side or inflation as it is in what's going to happen with jobs in our manufacturing sector.
So just so I'm clear, and for our viewers too at home, how or will Canadians be impacted by the escalation of the trade war between between China and the United States?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I mean, China, obviously a big importer of U.S. agricultural goods, right? So, and the U.S. a big importer of Chinese electronics, auto parts, other products that go into the manufacturing base. Maybe I don't know exactly how it's going to affect Canada. I mean, we, again, don't have imports on Chinese products other than certain sectors where we've matched those that the U.S. had in place. Like we have countervailing duties on steel and aluminum, right? We have the 100% tariff on Chinese EVs, but we don't really tax other Chinese imports above and beyond our most favored nation rates, right? For all countries with which we don't have a trade agreement. So, those costs of stuff coming in from China are not going to affect us. And we may even see a bump in some products, agricultural goods, where we compete with U.S. producers, right? This is cash crops or even meat products or seafood. They're now facing an 84% tax, right, on U.S. goods going into China. So, at least temporarily, that should give Canadian exporters a bit of a bump, even with the tariffs they put on some of our products.
So I'm sure that you and your friends talk about this. What's Trump up to? He's saying that countries are coming to him and wanting to negotiate. At last count, I believe there were 8 or 9 countries that have said, we need to come to Washington and sit down and work this out. But do you think that he is still open to negotiation, or are these tariffs here to stay to really upend what we know as a global trading environment?
Yeah, that's the impossible question to answer. I mean, I don't personally think Trump has a very well thought out, big, grand strategy here. He seems to be looking to break things, right? They simply didn't like how things were going before, and they want to break things up and see where the chips fall, see where their leverage is. It's quite possible they can negotiate some quick deals, right, with Japan, perhaps, with India. Maybe that appeases some of this investor worries around where the U.S. economy is going. I don't know if that's the grand plan. I think they do seem to want to keep in place some kind of base 10% tariff on most products coming in. Of course, Canada and Mexico spared from that. So they do have that kind of other goal, which is to raise funds for the government as they cut taxes in the United States. We just don't know. The question for us is, when are we going to get to the negotiating table? If they are negotiating with dozens of countries now, where does that put the review of the Canada-U.S. Mexico agreement, which was set to take place by the end of the year?
Yeah, and if you have negotiations with all these countries, that could take a very long time, which is why a lot of people are calling for that pause on tariffs. All right. Well, Stuart, it's great to have you back with us today. Stuart Trew is an international trade policy researcher with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives.